I'm calling to order this hearing. This is a hearing or roundtable, public roundtable of the Committee of the Whole of the Council of the District of Columbia. I'm Phil Mendelson, Chair of the Council, Chair of the Committee of the Whole. Today is Monday, February 12th, 2024. The time is 12:23 in the afternoon, and this hearing is being held in room 412 of the John A. Wilson Building. The subject of this hearing is two legislative measures, technically three. One is PR 25-618, University of the District of Columbia modifications 1 through 4 to contract number GF 2021 C 0009 with Bailey's Real Estate Holdings LLC, approval and payment authorization emergency declaration resolution of 2024, and its companion, which is Bill 25-673. With a similar title, the Authorization Emergency Act of 2024. And then in addition, PR 25-534, University of the District of Columbia revised compensation scale for UDC undergraduate and graduate students approval resolution of 2023. The stated purpose of, the stated purpose of PR 25-618, which is the declaration resolution, and Bill 25-673, which is the Emergency Act, is approval by the council of a retroactive contract between UDC and Bailey's Real Estate Holdings to provide labor, materials, equipment, and supervision for janitorial services to all UDC facilities. In May 2021, University of the District of Columbia submitted the base period of the contract, which was the council's number for this was CA 24-118 for passive review and approval. That means it was submitted timely. However, since then, the university has failed to send the council the contracts for option years 1, 2, and 3. An emergency contract is now necessary because UDC failed to send the option periods to the council timely, and because UDC partially exercised option period 3 to keep the contract under $1 million and now needs to exercise a modification which will take the contract over $1 million, necessitating council approval. The second resolution, PR 25-534, again entitled the Revised Compensation Scale for UDC Undergraduate and Graduate Students Approval Resolution, would approve wage increases for all graduate and undergraduate students employed by the University of the District of Columbia. The source of funds for the student wages are institutional and federal grants. The record in this matter will be open for 2 weeks. That is, it will close at 5 p.m. on Monday, February 26, 2024. Assuming that everything is in order, this would come before the council at its March 5th legislative meeting. We have two individuals who are on the witness list, both from the University of the District of Columbia. Mary Ann Harris, if you could come forward. She's Director of Contracting and Procurement and Chief Contracting Officer at UDC, and Avis Russell, who's General Counsel at the University of the District of Columbia. All right. Mary Ann Harris is virtual. Is Avis Russell here? Please come forward. Are both of you testifying or just you, Ms. Russell? All right, and then Ms. Harris is here for answering questions.
Yes.
All right, why don't you proceed?
Good afternoon, Chairman Mendelson, members of the Committee of the Whole. I am Avis Marie Russell, General Counsel for the University of the District of Columbia. Accompanying me virtually is Mary Ann Harris, Director of the Office of Contracting and Procurement and Chief Contracting Officer for the university, one of my direct reports. My testimony will address the errors in the contracting process that resulted in the failure to submit to the council for review and approval the option contracts for fiscal years 22, 23, and 24 between UDC and Bailey's Real Estate Holdings for janitorial services at university facilities. I apologize for the necessity of appearing for this purpose. As you know, the council approved this contract, CA 24-118, on May 24th, 2021, for a base period of 1 year and 4 option years. The initial mistake to submit option year number 1 contract became cumulative. The assignment of the contract to a new contract specialist after May 2021 precipitated the ensuing error. The contract specialist assumed that the May 24, 2021 approval included the 4 option years. As a result, instead of submitting the option year contract for council approval, he submitted a purchase order for $2,994,950 to the university CFO for payment. Subsequently, in option year 2, once again, a purchase order was submitted to the university CFO for payment. Upon the submission of the purchase order for option year 3, the CFO refused to approve the requisition order because the council approval had not been obtained. At that time, to continue service delivery, the university submitted a partial contract of $950,000 to ensure a valid contract was in place, while the balance of the option that was greater than $1 million was prepared and sent to the council for approval. It is unfortunate that this error occurred in light of the improvements and investments the university has made in its contracting and procurement process over the last 5.5 years. However, process improvement is a continuing process. The process in place at the time of these errors was a manual one. The university has invested in an electronic system to provide the Office of Contracting and Procurement a tool to better manage the acquisition of goods and services. It has many features, including controls that will alert contract specialists of the various actions needed to process contracts, including multi-year contracts. The supervisor reviews the controls to ensure that the correct controls have been put in place. President Eddington, as part of the university's strategic plan, has made compliance a priority. One of my performance goals this year is to develop a plan for implementation of a university-wide compliance and ethics program. The president is unequivocally committed to improving operational efficiency at the university. One of the areas of focus for process improvement this fiscal year is our contracting and procurement process. As he noted in his transmittal letter for emergency action on this contract, the magnitude of this procurement process lapse is not lost on this administration. We are developing and updating procedures, mandating annual training for contracting and procurement personnel. We will resume our partnership, which lapsed during the pandemic, with the district's Office of Contracting and Procurement to provide training and present best practices to our contracting and procurement staff. We have contacted the director of the DC Office of Contracting and Procurement to provide training this spring. Additionally, the university's internal contracting and procurement users will be provided ongoing procurement and contracting training to ensure sound acquisition outcomes. We are confident that these endeavors will improve our contracting and procurement process and avoid lapses in the contracting and procurement processes in the future. Thank you for the opportunity to present this testimony. I welcome your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. You also have a statement with regard to the second resolution, the compensation scale?
Yes, sir.
Do you want to give that now?
Okay. Good afternoon, Chairman Mendelson and members of the Committee of the Whole. My name is Avis Marie Russell, and I am the General Counsel for the University of the District of Columbia. Thank you for the opportunity to share brief testimony on PR 25-534, the University of the District of Columbia Revised Compensation Scale for UDC undergraduate and graduate students Approval Resolution of 2023. The proposed resolution increases wages for all undergraduate and graduate students employed by UDC. The source of funds for the student wages are both appropriated and tuition dollars and grants. UDC currently uses a flat compensation structure whereby all student employees receive minimum wage regardless of their position, classification, or capacity. We aim to ensure that employment opportunities on campus are competitive and rewarding. The changes in compensation structure for student workers addresses concerns of students and compliance with grants. Students have informed us of an interest in having a campus job, but that they can earn a higher wage in the employ of employers in the vicinity of the university campuses or within the region. Also, there are grants where employment is available to students and the amount of compensation provided in the grants exceeds the student salary schedule. A revised compensation scale will provide graduate students competitive wages and the opportunity to gain valuable work experience on campus as part of their academic program. Chairman Mendelson, thank you again for the opportunity to offer testimony on the restructuring of the compensation structure for student employees at the University of the District of Columbia. I'm available to answer your questions and those of the committee.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. So I'm going to begin with the retroactive contract. And I think I'll begin with this. Ms. Harris, how long have you been the Chief Contracting Officer?
I've been the chief contracting officer since 2010.
So then this lapse happened under your watch.
It did happen under my watch, but during my absence, which is no excuse.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last part.
It did happen under my watch, but during my absence, which is no excuse.
Which is what?
No excuse.
Oh, okay. And how long were you absent?
I was absent for a while with my husband just before he passed. And then I was absent because I was getting chemo.
Okay, I didn't mean to ask you why, just how long.
Okay.
Has there been a review of contracts to see if there are any others? Has there been a review of all contracts to see if any others should have come to the council?
We haven't reviewed all contracts, and mainly because this contract, which has options, is the only one of this type that we have at the university right now.
This is the only contract of the type that there are option years? Is that what you mean?
Options that are over $1 million, yes.
Okay. But it's still my question whether you've reviewed all contracts, because as we've learned with regard to other agencies, there can be lapses in an annual contract that doesn't have option years. So how long would it take you to do that review, and when would it be completed?
Let's say 4 weeks.
Okay.
And you're talking all contracts, right? To have
Yes.
options,
No, all contracts.
all contracts.
Yes. If they're under $1 million, then that's the end of the inquiry. But if they're over $1 million, including if there was what we call tipping, which is the case with modification number 3 or 4, then that would be of concern whether it was submitted to the council.
Okay.
Am I making sense?
Yes.
Contracts over $1 million or contracts under $1 million that then subsequently were modified to cost over $1 million.
Okay. That tipped it. Okay.
Yeah. Now I have a question for the Chief Financial Officer. Is he or she here?
They're available.
Yes, I am.
Roy Lane. So I was struck that in Mr. Russell's testimony, she said that the university has invested in an electronic system to better manage the acquisition of goods and services. But don't you, as the chief financial officer, have simply a box to check off council review?
When we get information from the Office of Contracts and Procurement, yes, our budget team has to review it, yes.
It wasn't quite the question I asked. Again, my question is, don't you have a review checklist that includes a box that says, was council approval necessary and was it obtained?
No, we do not.
And why don't you?
Because when we get purchase orders from the Office of Contracts and Procurement, it was at that point in time, the assumption that all approvals needed had been received.
And how did that work out?
Didn't work out well.
Okay, and we don't know whether there's any other contracts besides this one.
I have asked that question of the Office of Contracts and Procurement, and I was told there wasn't any.
All right, although you just heard the testimony that there hasn't been a thorough or careful review of all the contracts.
Yes, I have, and I would definitely be following up on that.
All right, you might, no, I think I'll phrase it as a question. Have you talked to the district government's chief financial officer, Glenn Lee, or his staff with regard to their process, since they just changed it last year to ensure council review?
I have spoken to the Associate Chief Financial Officer in the education cluster under which DCPS falls, and we have discussed certain changes that should be made at the university. Yes.
Okay. I don't take kindly to retroactive contracts. And that seems to me to be a function of the procurement contracting office for the university. But I view the CFO, which would be you, Mr. Lane, as the backstop here, so that payments are not made, as apparently happened this fiscal year, when you realize that there has not been council approval. So I think you're important to this process.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And we intend to make sure that we do our best to minimize this not happening in the future.
So, Ms. Harris, I'm assuming that you or your office didn't realize that option periods 1 through 3 had not been submitted. You didn't realize that until the CFO said that he wasn't going to process payments this fiscal year?
It wasn't caught by OCP until the requisition for option 3 was submitted to the CFO for approval. That is correct.
And I think I heard, Ms. Russell, in your testimony that there will be training this year or this spring?
Yes, we will resume our, the training that we had provided prior to the pandemic with, the DC Office of Contracting and Procurement.
Do you know if this lapse, Ms. Russell, do you know if this lapse was reported to the independent auditor who did the district government's ACFR annual comprehensive financial report?
I do not know if it has.
I will say that I believe that there was a finding, it was, I always get the terms confused. I believe it was not a material weakness, but it was a significant deficiency regarding DCPS not submitting contracts. And just as a heads up, I am going to ask President Eddington when we have the performance oversight hearing about another finding in the annual comprehensive financial report. I think that had to do with technology. So, to anyone here from the university, right now payments have been suspended to the vendor? Is that correct?
Yes, it
Yes.
has.
That's correct.
And the vendor can wait until March for payments to resume?
I reached out to the vendor to let him know that we were having some internal issues and that we had to deal with, and we had to come to council. So his payments would be late. I didn't say how late or when. And he had no issue with it.
Okay. Let me see if I have any other questions on this. Um, Ms. Russell, you in your statement said the process in place at the time of the heirs was a manual one. The university has invested in an electronic system to provide the Office of Contract and Procurement a tool to better manage the acquisition of goods and services. Can you elaborate on that, or is that for Ms. Harris to elaborate?
The name of the system that we've acquired is Jaeger. It was, I guess, fully implemented in the summer, and Ms. Harris can give more details about the capacity of the tool.
What's the name of it again?
It's Jaeger, Jaggaer.
All right, Ms. Harris, do you want to elaborate?
Yes. As Ms. Russell said, the name of the system is Jagger. It was formerly known as SyQuest. It's a fully integrated procurement system from procure to pay, and is almost similar to the past system that the district government uses now.
And does it have a mechanism in place to require, well, how do I put this, a check off on whether council approval was necessary and obtained?
The alerts that will be in system and that are in the system are the ones that we put in there. So yes, that will be implemented as well.
And that would be an alert both for a contract over $1 million as well as a modification that would tip a contract over $1 million.
Exactly.
Ms. Russell, the bill that was sent to us says approval of option number 1, 2, and 3. It should say 1, 2, 3, and 4, shouldn't it?
Actually, it is 1, 2, and 3. 4 is the last option, which we plan to get down, which will go in effect October 1 of this year. So we have time to get it to the council for approval before it's actually put in place.
Okay, good point. But maybe the resolution should also say modifications 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Okay.
You want me to revise the testimony to say that? Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm trying to just understand whether we're all on the same page here.
Because we're asking retroactive for 1, 2, and 3, and 4 will not be retroactive. That's why 4 was not on there. 4 will go through the regular process to get it to council by May before to go out.
Yeah, maybe y'all could look at it. The legislation, line 24 of the bill says, UDC modifications 1 through 4 to contract number GF blah, blah. And then line 28 says approves option number 1, 2, 3. Lines 32 say modifications 1, 2, 3, 4.
I can explain.
With,
Yeah.
So 1, 2, and 3 refers to fiscal year 22, 23, and 24. What we did in fiscal year 24, when we realized the error, is that we, to continue services, which are essential services, we entered into a contract for $950,000 for the early period of fiscal year 24. And then we submitted the remainder of the year for fiscal year 25.
Yeah,
24.
okay.
I think the modifications, I'm sorry, I think the modifications is what's throwing it off because there were 4 modifications, but 3 options for retro.
Yeah, there's no harm in the council affirmatively approving everything as opposed to only what you think it needs to approve. So you might relook at it that way. A question I have, which you may not be able to answer, our general counsel, is whether this council, the council that I'm on, has the authority to modify a resolution submitted by the university. You may not know this, but the council is limited in our ability to modify some resolutions that come from the mayor. I don't know if that would apply as well to resolutions that come from UDC. So we have to look at that. You could look at that as well.
Yes, sir.
If we can't do it, then I will need you to give us a letter that says that you're okay with our making the following modifications, but the following revisions to the resolution. But it seems to me that we probably are approving the modifications. That's what's most important, because I think, didn't you just say, Ms. Russell, that modification 1 was the exercising the option year? So the modifications have the same effect. Approving the modifications has the same effect as approving the option years.
Yeah.
Did I say that right? Approving the modifications has the same effect as approving the option years.
Okay, so let me just get clarification on this. The use of the word modification. We have not changed anything in the contract.
I'm
The
looking-
terms remain the same.
Yes, but I'm looking at the language in the
I understand.
resolution. There've been 4 modifications. You just explained what they were. The first one was option year 1, the second one was option year 2, the third one was partial for option year 3,
Yes, sir.
and the fourth was
The
tipped it
remainder.
over for, yes. So if you could sort that out.
Yes, sir.
I have questions about the other, but we've been joined by Councilmember Matt Fruman. Do you have any questions so far?
I don't, thank you very much, Chairman Mendelson. I don't have any questions. As you know, I take a strong interest in UDC. I just had a few minutes between things and wanted to come by. And it does seem like one, and I'm trying to be sure I understand this, but by approving, there was a contract for FY24, you cut it in half. One part of it you're treating as retroactive, you're seeking approval for that. You're not seeking approval for the second half because you think you're going to go through a formal process to get approval for that second half.
No, we are seeking approval for the remainder of fiscal year 24. What Ms. Harris was referring to is there's a 4th option year on the contract, which is for fiscal year 25, which we will submit for council approval in advance.
I see. I don't know whether that helps there, but I didn't understand it that way. I thought that there were four things: option year 1, option year 2, option year 3A, and option year 3B. But you're seeking approval for option year 3A and 3B. You're not, there's another thing, which is option year 4 that you're not yet seeking approval for. And
That's
I'd have to look at the black and white of the resolution to make sure that that came through clearly. But I will, not right this minute, but I will. And again, very excited about UDC. I'm sorry to see that this is a thing that you need to deal with, to go back in time and fix something that was wrong at in back years. But heartened that you have, and that you're coming to us, and that you're seeking approval for it. And let's get these things done in the right way going forward. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Let me turn to the other resolution.
Chairman Mendelson?
Yes.
Before we do that, I would be remiss if I did not advise you of something. I do not want to sit here and not make you aware of something that affects this contract. The DC Department of Small and Local Business has revoked the CBE designation for Bailey's. They have appealed that decision. But I wanted you to be aware. We maintain during the pendency of the appeal, their status remains the same. But I wanted you to be aware that that action had been taken by the DSLBD.
In your view, if that revocation is maintained, would that affect exercising the option for next year?
If, it depends on when the decision by the appeal is made. We checked with the DSLBD, and they told us that during the pendency of the appeal, the revocation is not effective.
Okay, I would not think it would affect the current year, because you're in the midst of the current year.
Correct.
So it would just affect next year, depending upon the timing.
Or if the appeal is maintained, but the decision of the DSLBD is maintained, then it would affect the current year, because then we would have to terminate the contract.
That's your understanding, you would have to terminate it?
Yes, because their status is a contractor as a CBE.
Okay.
But I wanted you to be, I mean, obviously we have to deal with the legal issues depending on what happens, but I did want to make you aware of that, because I didn't want you to find out later and the university
appreciate
had not
that.
mentioned it.
All right, let me turn to the compensation scale. My understanding in reading from the hearing notice, which we took from somewhere, was that this was going to be funded from institutional and federal grants, but I think in your statement, Ms. Russell, you said that it would be funded in part from the operating subsidy that the district government gives you.
Yes, my understanding is that some employees may be paid from allocated, appropriated dollars as well. And when the term institutional was used, I think it was referring to budget assets of the university, not just tuition dollars.
Okay. There was a memo last fall from your CFO, Mr. Lane, saying essentially that funds had not been identified, but then subsequently No. Prior thereto, it's interesting. There was a memo, so let me see, Mr. Lane wrote on October 23rd last year. Among other things, the university does not have sufficient funding available in the FY24 operating budget to implement the minimum wage rates for certain graduate students, nor any wages in excess of the minimum rates on the table. But then earlier, there was a memo from David Franklin that there would be no significant financial impact. So what's the deal?
Okay, Chairman Mendelson, Mr. Franklin is here. If you would like him
Excellent.
to come forward.
Okay. Mr. Franklin, do you want to explain? And what is your relationship to the chief financial officer for the university?
There is no direct relationship with the OCFO. I previously worked for the OCFO many years ago, but currently there's no direct relationship.
And your position is managing director of finance.
It's two titles. I serve as the Chief Operating Officer and also the Managing Director of Finance for the university.
Okay.
So with respects to the memo that was sent, we did an analysis. There are sufficient dollars within the university's budget to implement this particular pay scale. What it typically meant was that two things. One, we would have to reallocate funds from other areas. That could be anywhere from travel expenditures, non-personnel services to support any increase in this particular resolution. Or two, the second thing that we would have to do would be to some students, if we were supporting, hypothetically speaking, 300 students that was participating in the student work program, that might necessarily need to be reduced based on the current budget. So there were two options that the university can look at. Looking at funds, reallocating funds within our current budget to support the student work program. And if that was not an option, we would look to reduce the number of students that were participating to stay within the budget. And I believe, Chairman, that the fiscal impact statement that was provided by the OCFO actually spoke to this in detail. I think you should have that at this point. I think it came from the budget officer, Brian Connell, and that of who actually reports to the chief financial officer, Roy Lane. You should have that document with you as well. I think last but not least, I think Brian is actually on the panel this afternoon to get into the details of that particular fiscal impact statement.
Yeah, I don't see him, but I do see Roy Lane. So how much are we talking about?
So when you look at the total dollars that we have across the various funding, it's give or take around $941,000 that support the program. And that is funded with federal dollars and institutional dollars. Institutional dollars is a combination of local appropriation from the district. It speaks to that of our tuition dollars. And also we use what is known as post-secondary. Post-secondary are funds that the university receive from our auxiliary services enterprises, such as parking, such as the bookstore. So any additional resources we actually combine, and those dollars are used to support this program.
The total cost of the program is over 900,000,
Correct.
but this increase would cost,
The increase, I believe, was give or take, I want to say is around 200,000, Chairman Mendelson. But again, I'll have to pull that particular document. I thought, I was under the impression that Mr. Lane and Mr. Connell, when I spoke with them this morning, had that detailed information and that you had that available to you as well.
I don't think so. Mr. Lane, is there a document that I don't have? How do you answer that? The document I have from you is October 23rd, 2023.
We submitted a subsequent document to the university We are not the ones who directly sent information to the council. So at this point, I'm not certain what you have. We did.
I have a memo from you dated October 23rd, 2023.
Right, and we did a subsequent memo. What the university initially, or not initially, the university was not happy with the fact that we stated that, one, they had enough funds, but to the extent that they wanted to carry out to the letter, where in fact they will be given, they could give more than minimum payments to graduate students. We stated that at that point, the university did not identify those funds. The university came back to us and said, no, at this point in time, they intend to live within whatever budget they have. So either they would be looking for additional funds from the university or reallocating funds, or they would reduce the amount of students. So we prepared a memo detailing that effect, and we had sent it back to the university, and apparently that was not sent to you.
What's the date of that memo?
I don't have that with me. I could get that for you in 2 minutes. I just need to get with Brian.
Yeah, Brian is, I don't know who Brian is, but apparently he has to accept being promoted to.
There he is. He just came on. Oh,
Okay, Mr. Connell?
Yes, Chairman Mendelson, the date of that subsequent memo was November 2nd, 2023. And
All
that,
right.
that memo does go into more detail of outlining the exact changes in number of students or number of hours that would be needed to maintain expenditures within existing resources with those higher compensation rates.
Gonna sound very snarky the way I'm gonna say it, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Was anybody planning on sharing that memo with me? Mr. Franklin?
We were under the impression that that memo was actually sent to the council. So I'm gonna have to go back and do some due diligence to understand why it was not submitted to you. But again, we were under the impression it was sent down, and it really and truly went into details and would have clarified some of the questions you had here today. So my apologies if you have not received that, but
I
I
don't
gotta
have
figure
it.
out exactly where the gap took place here on our side.
All right, so I appreciate that you'll figure out how we didn't get it, but you also, I would appreciate if you would get me a copy.
Absolutely.
Um,
I will commit, Chairman, to having that, because again, we have it on file. I will commit to having that to you this afternoon.
So the bottom line is that you, Mr. Franklin, are comfortable with the financial impact of this resolution.
Absolutely, Chairman.
And the CFO, Mr. Lane, is comfortable with it?
yes, sir, we are.
And Mr. Connell, you work for the CFO or for the COO or?
I work for the CFO, Chairman Mendelson. I'm the
Okay.
budget officer for the university.
All right, so I kind of covered you by asking Mr. Lane if he was comfortable.
Yes, sir.
So what's going to end up happening? That you're going to reallocate or you're going to cut participants?
So it's a great question, Chairman. What we would prefer to do is reallocate, because again, we are really and truly focused, as you know, on the students. So we're looking at that budget in terms of determining where, again, we could trim to reallocate the funds to maintain the current number of students that is participating in that work study program. That is the goal of the institution.
Now, I assume this has implications for your subsidy request for FY '25.
Yes, Chairman, it will.
And I assume you also have been experiencing the mayor's budget folks telling you that they may want to cut the subsidy.
Well, yes, it's my understanding that there are cuts on the table across the district, and UDC will be impacted by those cuts.
Yeah, we haven't received the budget, of course. We'll receive it March 20th, but I suspect that it's going to be hard to grow the subsidy. That wasn't really a question. It was a statement, but you're welcome to answer it.
If it's a statement, I'm gonna leave it just there.
Compensation. You're right. Any question? All right, so the November 2nd, 2023 memorandum is the one that's just positive, as folks like to say, of the ability of the university to cover this.
That is correct, Chairman.
And you'll be providing that shortly.
This afternoon, Chairman.
Okay. I don't have any other questions for you. So I'm going to close out this hearing. Ms. Russell, you'll double check on what it is we're approving
Yes.
with regard to the retroactive contract. I think it is the modifications, all four. And Mr. Franklin, you'll get us that memo. And with that, let me just say the record in this matter will remain open until Monday, 5 p.m. on Monday, February 26, 2024. Thank you each of you for your testimony. The time is 1:09 p.m. and this roundtable is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.